last week, going towards the 4 weeks of Christmas. And if you remember, Jesus, he promised us in Isaiah that there was a day that was coming when the Messiah would arrive, and when he did, he would usher in this new government. And so a lot of times what we look at and what we see is a government that is corrupted, a government that says, I will bring you together, and yet what we get is a government of so divided. Am I right? We have so what God promised us was a government that would give us peace. And that's what Jesus is trying to give us. And the problem that arises is that when on that night, when the shepherds were out in the fields and they were tending to their sheep, they just thought it was going to be just another night. Nothing major going to happen. We're just going to be out here with these sheep, and we're just kind of going to look out for the wolves and everything and make sure that it's going to be all right. But yet what you find is that their whole life became disrupted with a host of heavenly angels that appeared to them. And probably they were looking around at each other wondering, I think we've been with the sheep too long. I think it's time to look for another job. When the angels told them that this new government that you have been looking for, I promise you that it's coming. And then this night is the beginning or the start of that time frame. And one of the things that we need to understand is this, that Jesus is coming again. And when he comes and sets foot on this earth, he will once and for all bring peace to us. The peace that will last forever. He made a treaty with us that was signed in blood. And not one drop of that blood will be wasted. And so sometimes as we continue, as we, I know a lot of people get upset because they say as Christians you shouldn't celebrate Christmas. It's a pagan event. And may I say this to you all? Satan has tried his best to duplicate everything that Jesus stands for. And even when, like for instance, the day of worship, like we'll say it's Sunday, you have others that will say it's Saturday. Others will say it's Friday. Others will say, well, it's not really defined. And so what ends up happening is we begin to get into these arguments and discussions of so many things. But yet the one thing about all of this, again, is the whole idea behind all of this is a giving of a gift. And I believe it is Jesus who made the statement that it is better to give than to receive. And I think I shared with you last week, everybody always continually asks me, what do you want for Christmas? And I keep trying to tell him, nothing. I don't need anything. Why? Because I love to give. If I need something, I'll go buy it. You know, I needed something, and so I went and bought it, and it came in the mail. Well, they shipped it in the mail. Okay, I got it. I want to say Friday, Saturday. I can't remember. I think it was Friday, maybe Saturday. That I got this package, and I opened it up, and Diana looked at it and said, "What did you go and buy that for?" I was going to get you that for Christmas. And I said, okay, here, let me take it out of the package, press it, and I'll give it to you. You can wrap it up and give it to me. If you want to give me a present, you know. But it's like, that's just who I am. Well, can I tell you something? God gets excited when he can give us the gift of his son Jesus. And as we're preparing for this time to honor that gift that he gave us, we're trying to understand that there are 3 points of things that this kind of gives us. As we talked about last week, we had the promise of hope. We talked about Simeon, if you remember. Simeon was a very old man. He was probably right around 102, 112 years of age. He had been promised that he would not die until he held or he saw the Messiah. And you think about this. Here is this guy. He's 70 years old, and he's watching everybody around him dying. And every morning he's getting up wondering, is this the day that God, you're going to call me home? But I know I'm not leaving until I see the Messiah. So every day he gets up with this hope that this is going to be his last day on this earth. Because why? He knows for sure that he's got a promise from God that he's going to see the Messiah before he dies. He is probably the only person that I know of that probably could tell you the day he was going to die. He didn't know the exact date, but he knew the event was going to occur, and then he was finished because God promised him that. And so he had the hope of every day being able to see the Messiah because he knew he wasn't going to die until then. And then there's peace and love, or joy and love, that we're going to talk about. And today we're going to talk about the thing of peace. And so when we look at the church that's built upon Christ, we need to understand that in this gift that we celebrate, it gives us those 4 things. Hope. Hope of what? Number 1, the hope of, I'm not going to see death. I will never die spiritually. I may die physically, but I will not die. And this hope that I know that there's something better than this. That this is not the end of everything. That there's something else that's out there. A peace that I know that one of these days disagreements go away. We truly will be in one mind, in one accord. Because the one thing that we're going to do is just praise God. with everything we've got. And we're never going to get tired of it. We're going to continue forever. And it'll never get old. It's just like we just started. And we've been there for who knows how long. And then we also have that joy. And a lot of times in this world, our joy is zapped. There's a lot of all of us that have people that are either we know or people that we're acquainted with in our family or others. I don't know about you, but this has been a hard year. I've watched a lot of my friends go home. That we kind of started on this journey, and along this journey we've grown close, and I've seen them go home. I've seen friends, loved ones with cancer occur here. It seems like it's everywhere. We're all touched by it in one way or another. And we see that. And it doesn't stop. And it just seems like our life, the joy of our life just seems to dissipate from us every day, more and more. But understanding that the joy that we have is not in this life. The joy that we have is after this life. But we still can have that joy of knowing that God is always there. Even though it seems like everything is crashing in around us. And then a love that is unspeakable. Understanding that God loves me no matter what. I got peace to know that there is nothing that I can do to ever make God stop loving me. Nothing. And you want to talk about a peace? That's a peace. That even though I know that there are times I fail, he still doesn't stop loving me. And it doesn't mean I got the right to fail, but it just means that if it does happen, he's not going to throw me away and say, well, you did it again, I got to start all over. No. I know that he's going to refine some and help me with these things. And so in understanding the illustration of Simeon, I think we grasp the point that waiting is not laziness. There's a lot of people today that are waiting on the Lord, but they're not active. They're not doing anything. They're just sitting down waiting. It's like, do you remember as a kid, when did you start getting prepared for Christmas? In January? That's December the 26th. Yeah, I started getting ready. Most of the time we kind of had this little, just a little push. But as soon as that turkey was eaten, we're moving on. It's roughly a month, right? It's roughly about a month, and then it's really, oh man, can't wait. Now, I don't know how many of you all, maybe you had a Christmas where grandma and grandpa would show up and all of the brothers and sisters, and it was just one big, huge family thing, a family get together at Christmas time of exchanging gifts and everything. There was food that was cooked, and there were presents that everybody would bring in and drop underneath the tree or wherever, and then everybody would just rush looking for their present. you know, shaking it and seeing it. Or maybe you had an orderly fashion as to someone would go to the pile of presents and grab a present and say, oh, this is your Joey, and this is your Susie, and oh, this is for Aunt Ellen, and this is for Uncle Joe, or whoever. And you just passed out those gifts, and everybody's just tearing and ripping and all of the commotion and everything that's going on. But I don't know about y'all. I do not go shopping on Black Friday. Because shopping on Black Friday is taking your life into your own hands. And I don't say that jokingly. Watch the news. Now, it's gotten better than what it was because they found out. Here you would have an ad. Walmart. I'll pick on Walmart because that's where most of the crazy people shop on Black Friday. They have this TV, 71-inch TV, and you don't even have a space on your wall for 71 inches. Okay? You've got to rearrange your whole house to get the 71-inch TV on there. But the 71-inch TV that you know, and I don't know what the prices are anymore because they keep going down. It's fascinating because I know, crazy. But remember when the TVs came out and they had a rear projection? Okay? And how heavy those suckers were? You were not hanging one of those on the wall. It took two men in a truck to move that sucker. It was so heavy, right? I've still got one in my basement, you know, and it'll stay there, and I'll probably sell it as part of the house. You know, I tell them it's part of the house. It goes with it. But anyway, they would always take that, and let's say that thing was generally $1,500. They would sell it they would have the ad for $500. And they would only have 3 of them. And people would line up 3 days in advance to get one of those 3 TVs. And as soon as the doors would open, it was a chaotic mess. It was like the Who concert, where they all had general admission, running over people, trampling people. Someone fell. You didn't pick them up. You left them lay and you just ran over them. Or how many news articles did you see where somebody went to pick up something and somebody else grabbed it and said, it's mine, and a fight broke out? Or somebody pulled a gun or knife and killed that person or shot that person. I'm afraid to shop on Black Friday because of that. Now it's gotten a little bit better because they do a lot of their Black Friday specials online. So I don't have to worry about all the crazy people and all the chaotic stuff. I just have to worry about, is it going to get here from China on the ship? You know, because that's where they made it at. And so, but yet you see these people, and now Black Friday is now like a Black Friday week or Black Friday month. It's not a one-day event. It's like a total event that you can go to. And so it's not as chaotic as it used to be, but I remember those days of trying to get that thing that my kid wanted, and you go there and you realize that all they had was just a few of them, you know, and it was sold out and they weren't getting any more. And you really became very disappointed to the point of like, what am I doing here? You know, and why am I shopping with all of this? And so the whole thing about Christmas became distorted. It wasn't a time of peace, it was a time of chaos in our lives and everything that was going on. And so what ended up happening, and I don't know if it ever happened to you, but it happened to me, that sometimes the actual feeling about the joy of Christmas got thrown out. It became a very disappointing time. And especially with your kids, when you would see everywhere the signs of joy and peace at Christmas time, right? You see those in letters and big marquees and all this stuff. And really what ended up happening was during this time frame, the joy and the peace, the two words got replaced with anger and frustration. Because you're driving around trying to find that gift and nobody has it. You're trying to find a parking spot and you're getting ready to pull into the parking spot and somebody comes whipping in front of you because you're being the nice person waiting for somebody that's crossing and you weren't going to run them over. And that person didn't really care. They just figured the person saw them coming, they're going to get out of the way. And so you begin a whole lot of things that's there. And I don't know. Because I think, doesn't everybody, I mean, even at war, when they had wars, during that period of Christmas, on Christmas Day, they generally would call it a ceasefire. And they would have peace. And nobody would fire upon the other enemy until after midnight of that day. And we always looked at it as a time of peace, failing to realize that really Christmas wasn't just one day. It's always that we're able to find the peace that we're looking for. But yet we try to substitute that peace with other things that are there. And can I say this to you? I don't know how much you've really read of the Bible, but if you really go back and look at the Bible and study the Bible and the writers of the Bible, you're going to find that most if not all of the writers of the Bible were always in a state of confusion or struggling with something. Most of them were not at peace. They were struggling with something or someone or an idea and having a difficult time. And yet when you look at the Bible, the word peace is used throughout all of the scriptures, from beginning to end. It's probably one of the most used words in the Bible, trying to help us to understand that in light of all of this confusion and everything else, that there is this peace that is going there. And so let's start, if you would, in Isaiah chapter 9, verses 6 and 7. Because this is a promise that God has for us. Look at what he says. Very well-known verses. For a child would be born for us. A son will be given to us. And the government will be on his shoulders, not ours. His. He will be named Wonderful, Counselor, Mighty God, Eternal Father, Prince of Peace. And his dominion, or the dominion, it will be vast. Basically, there will be no end to his dominion. And its prosperity will never end. You will never have to worry about Jesus ever going bankrupt or foreclosure. I want to see somebody foreclose on heaven. Satan's trying, but it's not working. He will reign on the throne of David and over his kingdom to what? To establish it and sustain it. It will have no end. Okay? And sustain it with what? With justice and righteousness. Two of the things that we have been looking for. I was watching a movie last night. I forget the name of it. It was Matthew McConaughey. I want to say Susan Sarandon, I think, and Samuel Jackson. It was about a black man whose daughter got raped. A Time to Kill. His daughter got raped, and he killed the two guys that did it. And so at the very end, Matthew McConaughey was a brand new lawyer. And he was telling a story about a little girl walking home, 7 years of age. And began to tell the story of what happened to her and how she was hung. She was beaten and died. And then he made this statement. Now just pretend she's white. Thinking that there's an injustice. And a lot of people think there is. And if you don't think there is, you're crazy. There is. If you're rich enough, you can get a good lawyer. Most of the time you get off. And we see it in politics all the time. People that should be in jail and they don't. They get out and get elected again and again and again. And they'll continue to do that. You and I do the same thing, and we're thrown in jail and the key's thrown away, and it's just not there. So we need to understand that we live in a world, ladies and gentlemen, where there's little peace around us. We're frustrated right now because of why? The price of gas. We haven't started getting, well, I don't know about you, but I've already started getting my utility bills. The church has already started getting theirs. They aren't like they were last year. And we haven't started getting into the real cold yet. And they've already told us. And you look at it, the price of everything's going up. The price of fuel oil, the price of this, the price of that is going there. And they really think that they've done us a great favor when the price of gasoline's gone down 3 cents this week. It's like, what about the $3 that it went up? You know, and all of these things that's going on. We watch the news, and we watch all of the people struggling. I mean, just look at this week. Hawaii, they got this volcano that now has erupted. And basically it's traveling, the lava is traveling, and it's headed for the main road that's going to dissect this island so they cannot get from the east to the west. Many people do not realize that most of the violent storms happen during the wintertime. We just saw it with the tornadoes and everything that hit Alabama and killed people and did all kinds of destruction that was there. I don't know if you see, but in other countries where they've had snow, the avalanches that have already started killing people and burying people and all of these things. And we look at all of this news, and every morning when you wake up and you're watching the news, they start, especially on Monday. Monday is the worst day of the week to watch the news, because on Monday they recap all of the bad stuff that happened on the weekend. And it's crazy. all of the stuff that's going on. I was talking to a lady this week who lives over on the other side of town, and she says that my landlord came in and I'm paying $625 for rent, but now I got to move. And I said, what are you moving for? She said, my landlord came in and he raised my rent from $625 for a three-bedroom house to $1,100. I said, they can do that? And they said, yes, they can do that. From $625 to $1,100. And just barely making to pay the $625. And she said, not just my house, they also own the house next door where my daughter lives. And the price of housing in Middletown has become absorbent. I've talked to some others that are looking for houses in Hamilton. Hamilton, where I used to live, we bought some of these houses where they are like they kind of look like where we grew up. My mom and them bought for $30,000. You know how much the market they're getting for these houses now in the market? These houses that used to go for $30,000 are now being marketed for $160,000 to $180,000. And I'm thinking, this is nuts. This is crazy. No wonder nobody can afford anything. You know? My neighbor bought his house the same time I bought my house, and my neighbor put his house up, and he told me, he says, well, I'm going to move. I'm trying to get all my kids out of here, and they won't leave, so I'm selling. That'll get them out. He said, I'm selling the house. I'm going into a two-bedroom apartment where they can't come. And he says, I'm getting my house already. And I said, okay. And I said, so how much are you selling it for? $600,000. I said, I'm staying where I'm at. And if you get it, I'm selling. This is nuts. It's crazy. And I'm thinking, who's going to pay this stuff? And I'm watching, and yesterday I saw a police officer pull up in a police cruiser, and they're looking at the house, and I'm thinking, I'm in the wrong profession. Maybe we need to go somewhere else to work, with all of these people that are getting all this money. But we're looking at all of this stuff. That's another story at another day. But what we need to understand is when we look at all of this stuff, you just think about it. What was it? Prices of used cars last year or the last 2 years. The price of used cars was more than the price of a new car. Because number one, you couldn't get a new car. They were sold out. They couldn't get parts for them. Oh, matter of fact, they couldn't get the electronic parts or the conductors that they needed because they couldn't get them from China. Oh, yeah. They couldn't get them here because they couldn't work. And so you couldn't get all of those things. So you know what they did? They sold the new cars without the electronics. Maybe that chip belonged to your airbag. Maybe that chip belonged to your anti-lock brakes. They're thinking, you really don't need it. Really? Then what are you charging me for putting it on there if I really don't need it? And it's so messed up. In all of this, when we look at this stuff and when we become so disenchanted with everything that's going on, and God's saying, hold on a minute, I'm telling you, I'm coming and I'm bringing peace. But my peace is not with this world. So don't get wrapped up in all of this stuff. Because when we do, it's going to bring us down. And we're going to be miserable in looking at all of this. In Luke, the 2nd chapter, verse 8 through 12. The one before that. There we go. In the same region, shepherds were staying out in the fields and keeping watch at night over their flock. Then an angel of the Lord said to them, don't be afraid, for look, I proclaim to you what? Good news of great joy that will be for what? All of the people. Today in the city of David, a Savior was born for you, who is the Messiah, the Lord. This will be the sign for you that you will see the baby, or you'll find a baby wrapped tightly in cloth and lying in a manger. Now let me talk about these shepherds. When you begin to look at these shepherds, a lot of times when we look at the shepherds, we think of the Christmas play, right? And we always think of these cute little boys running around with this real nice jacket, you know, and this little hat on, and they've got this staff. And we always look at them and we say, oh man, aren't they such cute little kids? Don't they look so good? And mom and dad's flashing pictures, you know, of little Johnny, you know, playing the shepherd, and Susie playing the angel, and all of this stuff and everything that's going on. Let me give you reality, okay? Because actually most shepherds, David was a little shepherd boy because all of his brothers were at war. And they were fighting. But most shepherds were actually the lowest of society. They weren't the people with a lot of money or a lot of esteem. They were the lowest. They generally were a nomadic group of people that, if I could use the terminology, they kind of lived off the grid. They would just move from one place to another, to another, to another. It wasn't like they were just had a home to stay at. A lot of times, if they weren't old, they were single young men who had no attachment to any family. Why? They had to move quickly because they had to find a pasture where the sheep could eat. And they might have to travel many, many miles to find those places. They were not clean. I don't know, but they really didn't have showers back then. And so they kind of got a little dirty. And I don't know if you've ever been sleeping in a barn. You kind of inherit a typical smell about you. There's the old saying, be careful who you hang around with, because all of a sudden you become more like them. And it isn't just the actions, it's the smell. And this is kind of the way these shepherds were. They were probably like your blue-collar worker. They worked a lot of hours with a low pay. They weren't getting rich. They were considered second-class citizens. And most people didn't trust them. And yet, these were the first group of people that heard the news about Jesus being born. That's the hope that we have. The peace that we have. The joy that we have is to know that we don't have to be the king, the queen, the president, the tier of the tier, you know, the one that there was an article in the newspaper of a former bingo player had his house up for sale, a $1.8 million house that had 6 bedrooms and 6 baths, and it had a golf course right behind it and had a pool inside and all of this stuff. And I'm thinking, what did he need with that house? He probably wasn't even married and didn't have any kids. But he's got this house. And you think that sometimes those are the people that everybody kind of latches onto and sees, the singer. It's like, for instance, if you were to give a concert, I guarantee you that Ticketmaster or Live Nation would not have a problem selling your tickets like they did with who's the Taylor Swift. Yeah. Because we're not a Taylor Swift. Our tickets would probably still be there because nobody would buy it. It's like, I don't think I'm going to pay $25,000 to go listen to Chuck sing. I might pay him $5 not to sing, if we can do that. But we need to understand that the peace at Christmas wasn't just for one person. It was for everybody, and they were all inclusive. And when they told them, I don't know about you, but if I'm a shepherd out in the fields and all of a sudden I see angels, I'm freaking out. And I think the angels knew this, because the first thing they say to him is, "Don't be afraid. It's okay. I know you've been out here with the sheep and you haven't seen a lot of stuff happening. It's been a quiet night and everything's kind of been silent and everything, but there's some really good stuff that's happening right now that you all been waiting for, and we want to tell you first." Think about it. How awesome to be the first to know that generally you're the last to know anything that's happening in the world of importance. But God deems you not the lowest, but the first. To give the message of all messages that today, not far from here, my son's born. The one that you've been waiting for. The one in the book of Isaiah that you've heard. He's here. He was just born a few moments ago. And as a matter of fact, he's right over there. Go see him. And guess what? While everybody else that's of importance is in the city, you're going to be the first ones to lay your eyes on the Messiah. You're going to be the first one to hear him cry. You're going to be the first one to experience the one that everybody else has been looking for, but have never seen him. You're the first. You're special. And that's what God wants you to know. That it doesn't matter who you are. To him, he's coming to you to give you hope. And that the hope isn't in your stature. The hope is in him. And in him alone to give those things. Now, I don't know about y'all, but I hate it when somebody comes to me and says, "I've got good news and bad news. Which do you want to hear?" It's like, really? I don't want to hear both of them. I only want to hear one of them. I only want to hear the good news, right? I don't want to hear the bad news. And so if you give me the bad news first, then yeah, okay, I'll take the good news, because this way we can end on the good news. But most of the time, what happens and which one do you respond to? Good news or bad news? We respond best to the good news. And this is what the angels were trying to tell them. Hey, y'all just think that this is an ordinary day and everything was gone, but it's not an ordinary day. Can I also tell you about peace? I hear people all the time, they want to talk about what is peace. And most people will define peace as an absence of conflict. But in essence, peace is not an absence of conflict. Because can I tell you something? Well, let me give you a truth. You will have conflict in your life every day. Do you know that? And if an absence of conflict is the only way that I can have peace, then I will never have peace in my life. Right? So therefore, peace cannot be defined as the absence of conflict. But can I tell you what is truly peace? It's not the absence of conflict, but it is the presence of God. So when I have the presence of God in my life, I have peace. No matter if my life is falling apart, no matter if everybody in the world hates me, no matter if Satan is lowering everything that he's got on me, I can still be at peace because I have God. And my peace is not defined by actions. Peace is defined by a presence of someone called God. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the only way you are ever going to have peace in your life. Without him, there is no peace. With him, there is the ultimate peace. To begin to understand. Last verses, Luke chapter 2, verses 13 and 14. Look at what he says. Suddenly, there was a multitude of the heavenly hosts with the angels praising God and saying, "Glory to God in the highest, and peace on earth." To who? To who? To people that he favors. Can I tell you something? God has favorites. Those that love him. Why? Because he calls us his friend, not enemies. Has peace. And giving that and saying that we have the peace. I said last verses, I have two more. Romans chapter 8, verses 6 and 7. This is where we finish. Now the mindset of the flesh is what? Is death. Every one of us, I mean, whether we like it or not, death is a thought. And it comes into our minds. I was sharing with someone this week. Used to, it was very easy to go through the obituaries. I think it was Marshall I was talking to about this week. It was easy to go through the obituaries and look at the majority of them were older than you. Now when I go through the obituaries, I'm finding a lot of people that are younger than me. And a lot more people that are my age. And for some of you that have reached your 80s, know what I'm talking about. that when you go out there and you look, most of the people are younger. And our mind is kind of set that there is this inevitable thing that's going to happen. We don't know when. I mean, you look at it in the newspapers. Death doesn't have a number. There's no magical number of when death is going to occur. It's going to occur from birth to wherever. But in Romans chapter 8, verses 6 through 7, look at what he says. Now the mindset of the flesh is death, but the mindset of the Spirit is what? Life and peace. What is life? Can I give you what life is? A definition of life? Life is the absence of death. So what did I get when I got Jesus? I got life. But the mindset of the Spirit is life. Number one. And peace. So when I got the Spirit, can I tell you that I now have the mindset was given to me? And when you come into a relationship with God the Father through Jesus Christ, his Son, may I say this to you, you get the mindset of the Spirit, and what you get is life eternal and peace with God. He says, I no longer call you my enemy, but I call you my friend. And when he calls me his friend, I am no longer at war with God. So can I tell you, I have it. So my mindset, I'm not concerned. It used to be, it was concerned about, okay, when am I going to die? My dad died when I was 20, when he was 51 years old. As I started inkling closer and closer to that, my 51st birthday, I kept getting a little more anxious of thinking, am I going to die of a heart attack too? Or die of something else? My wife Diana, her mom died. I think she was, she was 66 years of age in 2 months. And I noticed in the last couple of months, there had started some type of uneasiness that she was displaying. And I asked her, I said, what's going on? And she says, I'm hoping that I get past 66 in 2 months. Because she had always thought that she was going to die early and die young. But she now is past that 66 in 2 months. And now more at ease from that viewpoint. But sometimes it's what we think. Even though we have this peace, and it takes us a while to understand these things. And so this morning, we're going to ask Melva to come and play. But I'm just going to share with you a prayer that someone prayed one time, and because it kind of says more than anything. what we're looking for. And here was his prayer. He says, Lord, and giver of all good things. He says, the Magi traveled for miles to bring the Christ child the first Christmas presents. He says, so may we too remember with thankful hearts the love that comes with each present we open. We also thank you for the love that you have for each of us. We thank you for the many gifts that you give us, especially the gift of life itself. You see, what we don't realize is this. When we got saved, we got the gift of life. When we got saved, we got the gift of peace. When we got saved, we got the gift of hope. When we got saved, we got the gift of joy. We got those gifts. But the question arises, what did you do with them? Did you ever take your Christmas presents and wrap them up and hide them somewhere because you didn't want anybody to get in them? And you had that secret hiding place. And now it's time for Christmas. And you go and you get all of the gifts, you think. And you go and you get all of the gifts and you bring them out. But you forgot that there was this one special gift that you hid somewhere else. It was very special. And so you bring out all of the gifts and they're opening them and you look and you're thinking, I know there's this other gift and I don't know what happened to it. Then all of a sudden one day you're out there looking and you find that secret spot where that gift's at. And then all of a sudden you bring that gift over to that person to give it to them and say, hey, I forgot to give it to you. And the luster of it has kind of worn off. It's not as special as it was if they had opened it that day to see the joy and everything that's on it. That's what some have done with the gifts that God has given us. You see, He didn't hide them. He gave them to us. The problem is we just didn't open them. The best gifts that could ever be given, ladies and gentlemen, are still unopened. And I say this to you, open the presents up. You want to talk about a life that you want to enjoy, open up the presents that He's given you. The peace, the joy, the hope, the love. Because when you open all of those four presents up and share them with everybody else, it's going to bring a change. And they'll see it. This world will not be able to bring you to the point where it's bringing you. Because you understand this is not the end of this. The shepherds found out that night this was just the beginning. I have no idea what kind of stories they told, but I know one thing, it was a dandy. And I guarantee you, as those shepherds would sit around night by night, they would be telling the other shepherds that they ran into, you won't believe what happened to us about a month ago. We were out here tending the sheep and all of a sudden, man, the angels, the heavens just opened up. What a story. And I guarantee you they probably told that story till the day they died. My question is, have you opened up the presents and telling the story until the day you die? so that others can live on through the stories that are there.